Welcome back to Vuln Vibes. In this deep dive, we're going to talk about n8n, the workflow automation platform.
Hmm.
And specifically, we're focusing on a recently disclosed flaw that should immediately be, well, very high on everyone's critical patch management radar.
Absolutely.
If your security portfolio includes governance of, low-code or workflow execution environments, you really need to be listening closely to this architectural autopsy.
Our mission today is pretty surgical. We are dissecting CVE 2025-68668. And this is not just, Patch Tuesday noise.
Yeah.
We are talking about a critical severity vulnerability. It leads directly to arbitrary command execution, or ACE, in a system that, its whole job is handling high-privilege business logic.
And critical data flows.
Yeah.
And what makes this so fascinating and, frankly, a bit terrifying from a defense perspective is that the vulnerability is rooted in the spectacular failure of the primary security mechanism.
Exactly. This isn't some obscure deserialization bug.
No, it's a full sandbox bypass, specifically targeting the execution isolation layer, which then yielded ACE on the host system. When the fundamental control plane fails like that, you have an immediate architectural emergency on your hands.
That's the perfect way to put it. For an attacker, the path from just, authenticated low-privilege access to full operating system compromise is direct. It's unhindered.
It's a straight line.
It's a full context switch, right from the application boundary straight to a host-level breach. You have to assume worst-case scenarios for lateral movement immediately upon disclosure.
Okay, let's unpack this with the specifics. We're dealing with CVE 2025-68668, also tagged as GHSA 62R4HW23-CC8V. The technical source of the trouble traces back directly to the Python code node.
That's right. So the Python code node relied on Pyodide for its execution isolation. For those who aren't familiar, Pyodide is essentially a WebAssembly port of CPython.
Right, designed to run Python securely in a web browser.
Exactly, in a browser context.
Right.
And n8n leveraged this to provide, sandboxing inside the Node.js runtime environment.
And, well, based on the outcome, it seems like that integration didn't quite translate its browser-level security guarantees into a robust server-side isolation model.
It did not. The failure is, it's a classic sandbox bypass vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
An attacker was able to exploit a weakness in how Pyodide made assumptions about system access.
So they could just break out.
They could break out of that virtualized environment and execute code directly on the underlying operating system.
And the blast radius for this thing it's significant. It covers n8n package versions starting from 1.0.0.
Right, all the way up to, but not including, version 2.0.0.
That's a huge time frame. That covers a massive number of deployed instances, especially for organizations that manage internal tooling with, less aggressive patch schedules than their public-facing apps.
Let's focus on the threat model, because this is what really pushes the severity into that critical territory. The exploit conditions are, they're alarmingly simple for the return on investment.
How simple are we talking?
The attacker only needs to be an authenticated user.
Just any authenticated user.
Any authenticated user with the basic permissions to create or modify workflows. So if you have any employee who can design an automation flow, they are a potential vector. Or, more likely, their compromised credentials are.
So low privilege required, high impact achieved. That's a high yield vector if I've ever seen one.
Absolutely. The result is the ability to execute arbitrary commands on the underlying host system that's running n8n.
Huh.
And here's the crucial detail for security teams. The commands execute with the exact same privileges as the n8n process itself.
Which is often running as a pretty beefy service account.
A very beefy service account.
Yeah.
Maybe one with high network access or permissions to hit sensitive databases, cloud resources. This vulnerability immediately becomes a critical pivot point for lateral movement and privilege escalation within the broader infrastructure.
Before we hit the CVSS score, I want to stick with this architectural failure for a second. For our audience, what were the inherent risks in using something like a Pyodide browser-centric sandbox in a server-side Node.js environment? Was this kind of inevitable?
That's the core question, isn't it? Pyodide relies so heavily on the constraints of a browser environment, like, limited syscall access, strict memory sandboxing from the OS on the browser process.
Right.
When you lift that and you place it inside a Node.js process, which has much deeper system access, those security assumptions just start to erode very quickly.
You're basically trading the known risks of the browser for the lesser known, potentially much deeper risks of this kind of embedded execution.
Precisely. The vulnerability often lies in the interprocess communication layers, the IPC, between the Pyodide environment and the underlying Node.js runtime. That's what facilitates the escape.
So how does the new default fix that?
Well, you contrast this with the new default, the task runner-based native Python implementation. This new architecture likely uses true process separation, maybe even containerization.
Like direct process forking or something even lighter?
Yeah, maybe direct process forking or even something like Firecracker to execute the code in a completely isolated external environment. That separation is a much, much stronger security boundary.
So the lesson here is that the community has, for critical apps anyway, moved beyond trusting in-process sandboxing. Hard separation is the new standard.
That's the security lesson, 100%. You just can't rely on a complex, emulated runtime to contain an execution engine that powerful. This failure really validates moving to external, securely isolated execution runners.
Okay, now let's formalize that severity with the CVSS metrics. This is the language we all use to communicate risk. The rating is critical. So let's break down that vector string.
Right. The full CVSS 3.1 vector string is CVSS $3, 1AV, NAC, LLUI, NSCCI, and Try.
And that string really just confirms everything we've been saying about the low barrier to entry and the high systemic risk.
It does. Let's hit the high points. So AVN, attack vector.network, and that's coupled with ACL, attack complexity, low.
So easy to exploit remotely.
Very easy. It tells us reliable exploitation requires minimal setup and can be done over standard network protocols.
Yeah.
This is a weaponizable vulnerability. We should expect to see it in attacker toolkits pretty fast.
And the authentication piece, PRL, privileges required, low, with UIN user interaction, none. That means it's basically a fire and forget payload once an account is compromised.
Yep. No need to phish an admin. You just need a single set of basic credentials.
But the one that really seals the deal here, the one that makes it critical, is SC scope changed.
We cannot overemphasize this enough. A scope change metric means the vulnerability successfully impacted resources outside its intended security boundary.
It's the formal confirmation that the sandbox just dissolved.
Exactly. Any sandbox escape that results in SE is by definition a top-tier severity issue because it demonstrates a complete failure in architectural containment.
That's that protection mechanism failure we mentioned at the top. The security assumption was just nullified. And when you look at the impact to the CH for high confidentiality and IH for high integrity, they're just the consequences of that scope change.
They are. You can read any file the n8n process can. You can modify system configs. You can deploy persistence. CH and IH mean full data compromise and system modification are assumed. The AL, low availability, is almost irrelevant at that point.
And from a weakness classification standpoint, the root cause is mapped to CVE-2025-68668, protection mechanism failure. That's spot on. It wasn't just a coding bug, it was a design flaw in the whole isolation strategy.
Textbook example, relying on soft boundaries in a hostile environment.
Okay, so let's move on to remediation. This is the immediate concern for anyone out there running n8n.
Right, especially those managing a large estate of 1.x installations. Where do we focus the patching efforts? What's the definitive fix?
The definitive fix is that architectural shift we talked about. The vulnerability is patched in version 2.0.0 of n8n. Upgrading to 2.0.0 or higher is the primary non-negotiable defense.
And just to be clear, this upgrade isn't just fixing a bug, it's fundamentally replacing the entire vulnerable execution model. Precisely. An upgrade to 2.0.0 is mandated, really, not just for the fix, but because it pulls the entire platform onto a more secure foundational architecture.
The task runner-based one.
The task runner-based native Python implementation. It was actually introduced as an optional feature way back in version 1.111.0. By making it the default in 2.0.0, they're enforcing that strong security boundary.
Okay, but we all know enterprise environments. A major version migration from 1.x to 2.x takes time. There's regression testing, staging. For organizations that can't do that migration tomorrow, what are the immediate compensating controls?
That's the critical question for the ops teams on the ground. We have 3 immediate, very strong mitigating controls that leverage environment variables. These should be implemented right away if the patch is delayed.
Let's start with the most effective short-term fix.
Okay, 1. Enable the Secure Task Runner Sandbox, even if you're still on a 1.x version.
Ah, so you can backport the new architecture.
In a sense, yes. You can configure n8n to adopt the more secure task runner by setting 2 environment variables, an m-time runnersable true and 89 native Python runner true. This forces the use of the stronger, separate process isolation model, effectively mitigating the Pyodide bypass vector without a full 2.0 deployment.
It seems like the highest value tactical control then. it addresses the root cause directly, but I guess there's always a non-zero risk of compatibility issues with legacy workflows.
There's always a trade-off, but the security gain here is just enormous. If, for some reason, enabling the native runner is blocked, the next steps are simply about reducing the attack surface.
So step 2 would be if Python isn't a core business requirement.
2. Disable the code node entirely. If your organization doesn't actively use code execution nodes at all, you eliminate the vector. Just set the environment variable node to rate exclude. nmn-nodes-base.code.
Classic defense in depth. If the component can't be instantiated, it can't be exploited.
Simplest fix there is if you don't need it.
And what about orgs that need the code node? Maybe for JavaScript, but specifically want to kill the Python risk.
That's option 3. Disable Python support only. Since version 1.1048 or Zizzer, you had granular control. Set the environment variable n8n Pythonable false speeders. The code node stays active for other languages, but you've severed that specific Pyodide execution path.
So those 3 layers give you a really comprehensive tactical response. Prioritize enabling the native runner, and if that fails, disable either the Python capability or the whole code node until the 2.0 Adreno migration is done.
Absolutely. Each of those steps provides a stronger security boundary. Security teams need to treat this like a critical zero-day disclosure, really, even with the patch available, just because of how easy it is to exploit.
Okay, so let's summarize the key takeaways for everyone listening. This was a deep dive on CVE-2025-68668, a critical arbitrary command execution vulnerability, and it's driven by a low-privilege authentication requirement.
The root cause was a fundamental protection mechanism failure, CVE-693. That failure allowed a complete Pyodide sandbox escape, leading to that dreaded SC, scope-changed metric, which confirms the collapse of the security boundary.
The primary directive is to move to the 2.0.0 architecture. Adopt that native Python runner as your new, robust security boundary. If you can't upgrade immediately, implement the native runner config via environment variables in your 1.x branch.
And that really brings us to the final, I think, provocative thought here about this expanding attack surface. These modern workflow platforms like n8n, they're becoming the central nervous system for enterprise data and logic.
They're authorized to touch everything.
Virtually every resource in your environment. So when a flaw like this happens in a multi-language execution engine, the compromise is total.
It effectively turns your automation backbone into an attack proxy.
Exactly. This mandates a rigorous, immediate audit of all your automation stacks for these kinds of risks. You need to question the isolation model of every single tool that runs user-defined code, whether that's Python, JavaScript, whatever.
You have to assume a security failure is possible.
You have to. And your architecture must ensure process separation and minimal privileges to contain the inevitable breakout. So the question you need to ask yourself is this. If a sandbox escapes on one of your internal workflow engines, what permissions does that service account hold and how far can an attacker reach? Audit your execution runners because that is where the real risk lies today.